this session and request everyone to please be seated. Alright, thank you so much. I want to introduce you to the session. It's all about strengthening the supply side of India's space ecosystem. This season brings together startups, industry leaders and policymakers to address key supply side challenges in India's space sector. The discussion will focus on actionable strategies for bridging gaps across the value chain, emphasizing collaboration between emerging and established players, policy support, and building a resilient, self-reliant ecosystem for sustainable growth. And for that, I would request you all to please be seated so that we can proceed. And I would now take the opportunity to introduce our moderator for the day, Mr. Khot, Director Strategy and Planning in Space. Can we please have you, sir? And I would also take the opportunity to introduce the other panelists. The other panelists are, in no particular order, Mr. G. Levin, Executive Director, Kerala Space. Mr. Achyut, Chandra, HCL. Can we have you here, sir? Then we have Mr. Vinay, Simha, CEO of Skyserve. Mr. Nanduru, Sarath, Chandra, DGM Marketing, L&T PES. And I would now...
Rajit Kumar.
Mr. Rajit Kumar, can we please have you? Now over to you, moderator. You can take care of this session onwards.
Very good evening, everybody here. I'm glad to see that there's more people here than the people on the panel, which is a triumph by itself. And having adequately caffeinated up, I think everybody is past that point of acute caffeine deficiency. And at 4 o'clock, I'm going to request everybody to just come up to the front chairs, please. Let's make this a cozy little round table, which was intended to be in the first place. So if all of you just come to the front chairs, so especially those who intend to sleep behind this pillar, I'd like to get you guys in front. Oh, right. Okay. That's looking much better. And I'm sure as time goes on, some of the people who need to sit down are likely to come into the hall as well. So, all right, let me give you a little background as to why this session, why this talk. It's very clear that the Indian space economy and the space industry is at an inflection point. Why do we say that? One, we are about 4 to 5 years into these space reforms. There is a certain amount of energy that is built up in the market. We have 300 plus startups at this point of time, and which is an unprecedented rate of growth. The government has given us fantastic tailwinds with policy, with structures, with infusion of funds, and with very clear direction and vision. That's fantastic. But there is also the fact that this is a critical decade. I drive the Decorative Vision Office at InSpace, and the criticality of this decade cannot be overemphasized. And why is that? Because at this point of time, the other space economies, like around the US, but the rest of them are not greatly ahead of where the Indian space ecosystem is. With a little momentum, we stand a very, very fine chance of being globally very competitive. Provided the cards are played right, provided the right things happen within the right time frame. So this decade has to be negotiated very carefully. This is also a fragile phase in the life of the space industry. It is young. It is inexperienced, except for a few people who are probably reaching maybe the age of 8 to 10 years. The rest of the space industry is very, very young. And there is a transition going on from a government-driven program to a market-led program. So that's about economic transition. From a government-driven economy to a market-driven economy, where the demand and supply side is supposed to be led by market forces. So this transition and this fragility and the youth and the inexperience of the space industry makes this a period to be carefully negotiated. In its space, we are running a demand generation drive as part of the Decade Vision strategy. And we're very clear that unless the demand steps up, the rest, because in a regressive fashion, that is what translates into the upstream economy. No one's buying a rocket unless there is data required on the ground. Right? So everything finally has to be at the user end of things. The downstream area, the solutions, the practical applications, whether they come from Earth observation, whether they come from satellite communication, or from the P&D area. At the end of the day, if the consumer does not put the money on the table, nothing upstream is going to be required. Right? So in the demand generation drive, the principal impediment being just customer awareness. People are not aware of what power space applications bring to whatever area they are in. If it's government, it's governance and administration. If it's industry and business, it is profitability, it is prevention of damage, it is saving of costs, it is efficiency. But the customer is unaware how space technology and products and services translate into these benefits. The World Economic Forum McKinsey's report of last year talks about a benefit of nearly $3 trillion to the non-space global GDP, non-space industry. That's what is there to be gained in terms of profits, in terms of sales. But the customer is not aware. So we have a customer awareness campaign. And as part of the customer awareness campaign, we are running a series of workshops that we call space applications adoption workshops. And when we started to take the NGEs with the applications to the customer to demonstrate their products, their current capability, and what solutions they already have on the table, which are there very quickly. There's a great deal of excitement in the consumer community. And at the same time, what slowly emerged was that we weren't perhaps fully ready. So while the demand generation drive is going to pick up a certain amount of momentum, it is going to yield results. We're making sure it will yield results. And when the demand steps up, from the supply side, if we were to fall short, because that scale-up is going to pick up a particular momentum and suddenly become rather large. At that time, from the supply side, if the industry is not able to scale up their delivery at the required quality, at the required speed, in volumes that are required, with the variety that is required, what kind of signal is that going to send in a new industry? It will take one negative signal, a wave of that to pass. There are enough skeptical narratives. There are enough people adequately pessimistic. Those narratives exist all around us. If that negative signal was to reinforce that, no one is going to look at space solutions for another 4 or 5 years. So, oh, we tried it, it didn't work. It cannot be. Which means that this is a coterminous activity. It has to meet in time. The demand scaling up and the supply being ready has to meet in time. If that is to happen, the supply side of things, the readiness of the industry to deliver has to be very high. And the concern that started to color my original optimism as time went on was that there are gaps that we need to identify. That's where this panel comes from. So the focus is largely on the downstream side of things because that is what the consumer is going to consume. Consumer eats the biscuit, or the bread, or the roti, and not the wheat. So if no one is consuming that, someone is going to stop farming wheat very shortly. So that's where this panel is coming from, and this is a serious area. I wanted this to be a roundtable, and we're going to make it a roundtable. So everybody, all of us are part of this. The principal people are here, but everybody in the audience is also very much a part of the discussion that's going to go on. So for this very interesting topic, it's necessary for us to dig a little bit more, right? Identify the gaps and weaknesses, ideate and strategize. At the end of this panel, we'd like to leave with a list of salient, identified shortcomings, deficiencies, strategies to resolve them, and clear action points, and an identification of the parties who are the stakeholders today. So that is where we would like to end this panel with. So I request everybody to put on your thinking hats and contribute to how to solve or to resolve the issue that is in front of us, right? So for this panel now we have Shri Achyut Chandra, with over 10 years experience at HCL Technologies. He leads the government technology strategy, which is essentially driving a program which is very product-centric, innovations for the government of India customers, for the public sector, and for the defense. So that orientation from HCL Technology, which is one of the large downstream firms, and so far not part of the space applications workshops. In addition to that, what is very interesting is he also leads at HCL Technologies the effort to help the Indian startup ecosystem. And that is something we will get to in the process of the discussion. We also have from Skyserve, Vinay, Simha, co-founder and and CEO, yeah. So he brings to the table the struggles of a startup, the experience of having negotiated the area of putting something up and getting it bootstrapped up to a working level, India's observation area, and its various different offshoots there. We have with us Shri Ajit Kumar, IAS, and he represents the government of Karnataka, the Department of Electronics, IT and BT. And for us, he represents from the supply side of things, not the industry, but the government element which is looking to bridge these gaps, provide the support to the industry to meet the objectives of the industry. And Karnataka has got a very strong ecosystem around it, that's number one, Bangalore-centric. And also that it has a very strong space aspirational program, a policy that's coming up, and an aggressive space manufacturing cluster. So it's one of the states that we look to collaborating with towards the manufacturing clusters. And then we have Shri Chandra from L&D, over 16 years at L&D, essentially in the marketing and business development, towards projects and contract management. And so he largely represents the upstream area, which we will visit for a little while. And also along with Achyut, probably the person I'll be looking to find ways of how the large players can collaborate with the smaller and the medium players as we go. So let's get to that background of the panel itself. And the first question is going to be and just around the downstream people, including those in the audience. Do you think that the space tech downstream industry is ready to deliver as expansion starts to happen, scaling up starts to happen, and as the demand scales up? So where are we on that? Let me start with Vinay.
Largely, my first answer is yes, sir. There are some mature players from India who have been building decent amount of geospatial solutions for the user. From India, for India and from India to the world, and we have been very good at it, although it's not spec'd out as a part of this. The reason is it comes under an IT services umbrella, and geospatial is a veterinary service line, and hence it's not called out. And there's been some decent efforts that's been done. Now, the challenge that we have and the opportunity, I would say, is the data that's been purchased to solve for user needs are from the supply side, and that is something that's maturing up. Some of the players in the audience also are contributing to it, some of us here also contributing to it, where we have the right imagery data product from supply side that can fulfill users' needs on the downstream side, and they can go back and augment it. So we are between, on the supply side, between 2 to 3 years that we will take to get to be a much more resilient supply chain versus where we are today. And that's something that the entire ecosystem is working on. We should be in a much better position where we have a continuous supply chain for the users that we have today across sensors to the variety of data products.
Yeah, but the more difficult part, are we geared to face the expansion?
I think so, sir. The government and in space, doesn't from the defense side, from the commercial, have been a catalyst. At least these have the policies came crashing, the crashes have now grown to form a tree, and now we are seeing the upswing for it. Some of the notable ones are the OPPP program, some of the other strategic defense programs. These are multi-use, dual-use solutions that have come up. Also, we are seeing new sets of launch vehicles. Apart from the SLV, now we have SSLV in this mind. We should logically extend such kind of a payload, like Smile, we should do it on Skyroot or others as well. So we have faster TRM maturity plans, so we can start reducing the caps so we can bring out much more reach. Is my reading on that.
Thank you. Achyut, can I have your views on how ready is the downstream industry to face a scale of demand and an expansion of the industry as it happens?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. Interestingly, sir, we've, across the day, I've been observing a few of the sessions. We've been talking about investments, we've been talking about capital, so on and so forth, right? But we haven't been talking about what is called as, usable capex or resilient infrastructure, which already exists in the country. So, short answer to your question, yes, of course. Have we tested it? No. We are still in the process, I would say. We really need to give almost all the players in India so that they have the opportunity to, test out, give all the areas of concerns which are there, so that we can make them rightly built, here in the country. And of course, there's also a bigger element of eventually having a shared value stream with some of the other countries as well. So maybe having an export lane through this as well. So yes, it is there. Have we completely exploded? We're in the process. I would say we're in the journey. We should, really be doing more across it. But very confident, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, as we get down to the specifics a little bit more, and I will have a little more on the specific side, and I would also ask people from the audience who are conversant with this to weigh in at this point of time before I take it to the next level. So, can I ask Arpan here to weigh in? Do we have a mic for him?
So, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the mention, but I'm leaning on the side of a little pessimistic that we are probably not ready yet. Right? We are ready based on what we think is the linear curve of what we are seeing today. Like we are projecting just a linear curve to where we are from that position. But I think no, we are not ready. We have not invested into infrastructure. Either in the upstream side or in the downstream side, not to the extent that we have.
Could you spell out some specific to downstream?
Yes, so from a downstream perspective, we are part of a national project where we are churning data at a country scale, right? And it is essentially related to drone mapping and digitization program, right? We are already seeing a woefully lack of infrastructure at the scale of a country to handle data of petabyte scale and processing on the go. Right, we are dependent on, again, cloud service providers. We can offload on them, but that's not a sustainable solution. You can't bill as you go on a dollar value, right? It can work. You have great, amazing solutions. You have managed services on the cloud and etc. But have we created our own managed service to the extent that can match? I will not go into names, but some of the big ones that we always hear about, right? As managed services, do we have geospatial infrastructure managed services? We have not invested into it as a country. Are we? Yes, people are doing a great job at building those pipelines in blocks, in pieces, in silos. But as a coherent whole of nation approach, I don't think it has come up in the strategy and the roadmap of that. For example, we are running out of space. We are running out of cloud processing. The capacity. The GPUs are not there. I mean, there is. It's not even in the vision map of the person who has created or the entity which has created that program on what kind of utilization they could have seen. Right? It was not even accounted for it. As they went along that program, they started seeing that they have run out of funds to support it. Right? So from as itself, we are seeing there are broken pieces in that chain. While we can say X number of data centers were created, Y number of optical fiber backhaul was created, so much of processing was done. Where is the people also? We are going to touch up probably at some point about talent. I think we need to really address is that have we enough talent manpower? I mean, we can talk all about AI, but we still need people to make those models. AI can help you, can automate for you, but it cannot build you models, unfortunately. So I think a lot of these things need to be addressed in general.
Okay, so we have a counter view here, and Arpan has pointed out 2 or 3 things which to my mind are kind of critical. We are looking at upping the satellite constellations over the next couple of years. Petabytes of data are going to flow in. Where are data centers to accommodate that? Where are the processing chains to process the variety of data that's going to come in? And do we have the manpower talent available to scale to do this particular thing? So, do we have enough? Are we churning out enough people at the appropriate skill set? These are the questions that preliminarily come to our mind. And a few of the gaps and deficiencies he has identified. Post that round, is there anything that you see that we probably may be short of in terms of resources, or a plan to put that into motion? So is this something you can identify?
Agree with that on we are piece of the same cloth. I don't think we're different from our views. There is no doubt that there is a huge, we are a degree factory, not a talent factory. That's a given. We have, for one position that we interviewed in our company, we had about 800 profiles. The shortlist went to 330, from 3 to, even with an open book test or go read ChatGPT or Google or whatever it is, and come back after a week, we could finally hire one person of it. So there's no doubt from a degree nation, we should be a talent nation. Point factor, I don't know how, we have many thoughts on that as an industry or as an ecosystem. What we have to build out is something that we have to get our hands dirty. We have to play and fail to get to the next level, is how I see it. And we should not be following the copybook test. First part. Second part is we will be generating petabytes of data in space. That's a given. By the multiple data points of that, by 2030, we'll be generating 2,000 plus petabytes of data. How we process all the data, how we get into that, and so even if we take is we are a line of sensor silos, how we go back to that and stuff like that. And if we have to do the petabyte of data processing, something that Arpan also understands this very well, is we have to process a significant amount of data in space as well, because 7% of Earth's atmosphere is filled with clouds, and there are many use cases which do not require cloud data, which is clogging our ground station pipeline or the cloud paper. Hence, we need a smarter data processing at the edge. Similarly, we need something next to the ground station so these guys don't go and shut the cloud and give an enormous bill and keep the password and then spoil the compute system. So the West and others have been deploying clouds and data centers in a big way. We should be smart in the data center planning. We should be in complete agreement that we should be having these all as a piece of puzzle for us to go through planning, plan C. These have to be parallelly constructed, not serially constructed as well, in complete agreement. But we should be building this like the way we did WLL or CDMA, and then we switched on to GSM, which has been accounting for this and a very compounding effect for this. And also the fact that we had the set-top box issue where India did a set-top box transformation, but the bulk of the business of hardware and other things went to China and Taiwan. And these are critical examples for us to build right and build smart as well. That is something that we have to evolve also.
At HCL, do you have your own data centers, archival facilities, and high compute processing stuff? I expect that serving the market that you do, you will have some of that influence.
Yeah, so that's what I was alluding to. So at HCL, what we've done is that you've all, I would say, heard of the services play, which is has been there for the last 40 years. Actually, we're celebrating 50 years of incorporation of HCL next year. Last 5 years, what we've also done is that we are moving towards the creation of what is known, very much into the product nation. So we've invested close to about 50,000 CR worth of capital last 5 years, in terms of getting and acquiring and building more and more of close to 75 plus products here housed in the country. What does that unlock for us? What that has unlocked for us is that has been opened up now for some of the national critical infrastructure applications. Because you would not want, the data pillar to be really going out and then that processing being done there. When you can actually host it over here, you can have data pipelines is an excellent example. You can have the data lakes, the warehouses, the entire metadata management, all of that, housed here in the country. And then, look, also then invite some of the startups in the ecosystem to build those use cases here to be tested through the same modular DPI type of a framework, right? So that's what we're doing. We've invested in building data products. We have, we're deploying data products, AI products, cyber products, and also hyper personalization, because you would want the downstream to really go out to the end citizen. We talk about government to citizen, so which is that how can you properly segment that data and reach out to crores and crores of citizens where it is really required. That's what we do.
I understand the data products. I'm talking about the the more hardware side of it. I'm talking about data centers, right? The GPUs, the high compute, that kind of infrastructure. Do you think you are adequately equipped at this point of time for it to absorb a massive increase in the amount of data flows that come?
So we don't build GPUs, we don't build hardware infrastructure, but what we do is we work on the foundation products which can really be housed on what is called as the sovereign data lake. So we work on those existing hardware. So for example, we're working with CTAC on their existing supercomputer facilities which are underutilized right now. Now, for that utilization to really happen, you really need the supply side to be more and more open to the consumers. So we work our platforms, our products work on the inherent and on-ground infrastructure which already exists, and then we make it more usable. In ways that we can create more use cases, more applications, and more logics that we can house out of the country.
If I can add to that, sir, L&T has invested big time into data centers, and with our investment in E2E, we are also providing cloud-based services. So we have data centers, both of them live, one in Panvel and one in Chennai, wherein we have the required infrastructure where we provide two kinds of solutions. Either if a GPU, if a vendor wants to position the GPU in our data centers and use it, that can be done, or even a cloud-based service is something which we provide. So we are, to answer the first question of yours on whether we are geared up at certain levels in some pockets. As a whole, as an integrated system, are we? I think I agree with Arpan that we need to do a lot to get there where we have.
That's a very interesting point that has come up of underutilized infrastructure, right? And so this is probably it exists in pockets that we are unaware of. There is probably some stuff which is not being used adequately, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So that might be part of the solution that we go. Do we, for example, now, do we really understand what is it that the customer is going to need in bulk when the expansion starts? When the demand starts to go up, what is it that the whole variety of range of customers? It's not only government and not only Ministry of Agriculture and Food Processing or Forestry, which are the traditional customers. We're talking about any and every industry. And one of my concerns comes from the fact that when we did a space applications workshop with the Agriculture Ministry, there were 25 people with solutions there. And the solutions did look greatly different from each other. These are traditional areas already walked by each other. When we start to look at areas such as power, we found the number dwindled to some 3 or 4. When it came to BFSI, there was just about 3 or 4 people with some solid, credible, ready applications ready to be deployed. Some are already deployed. So there's a range of use cases and consumer interests that are not really being met to the variety and volume that is required. So the concern here is that there may be a tendency to look at what is already established, what is easily understood, and work into that. But when it comes to what we're going to look at 2 years from now, when all other ministries of the government and even businesses and industries say, all right, I have got requirements, this is what it looks like. Do we know what they may be, whether it is in SATCOM, whether it is in the PMT area, whether it is in the Earth observation area? And when that demand goes up, for example, X ministry wants to deploy 1,000 pieces of location embedded sensors for an IoT kind of a sensing system towards disaster mitigation. Do we have the manufacturing ability to scale that? Who's doing that? And how far are we from setting up such a facility? That's the question that comes to mind. So when you're looking at the supply side, right, there is going to be user devices that may be required at the scale of thousands of pieces. Do we have the manufacturing capability right now? Answer is no. Have we started setting up? I don't see it. So these are the questions. So do we even understand, do we even know, and that's my question to the panel, how much do you think we understand what the use cases are? What is the consumer demand really going to be? Or do we need to work at acquiring this knowledge?
I can take that, sir. Firstly, I would like to say that the initiative that you have brought up in InSpace, where innovator meets user thing which you are doing, is really helping us understand what are the end user requirements for which we can set up and create the required infrastructure. So on that, so do we really understand? We don't have a complete understanding, frankly speaking. We need to go knock on the door of the end user, understand and make them understand that this is something as a solution you can have from space. Are you interested in doing it? And it can be commercially viable for you than what you are doing it in a terrestrial way. In fact, we do that in L&T. For example, hydrocarbon, they are building up a huge solar plant in UAE. We try to tell them, come on, why don't you use space-based data? With space-based data, you can really map that huge area. You don't need to do it in a terrestrial way. So that's what we are trying to do, educate the end customer and then show it to our management that yes, there is a market, let us now invest in it. So it's like a chicken and egg story. Right? So but a straight answer for that is no, we don't have complete understanding. We need more efforts for the end user to really understand the capabilities that space-based data and communications can give.
So I go back to the UPI moment. When the UPI document was first given to the set of clients, and with all the details given, bulk, and there was a closed-door workshops that was held, like what you did with SAR, and continue to do that great work. Bulk of the people who had the document did not read it. The guys who read the document are not from India. They are from US and Europe. They looked at the document to say, this is transformation. This will change the level of understanding. This will change the way the banking works from an Aam Aadmi to a Khas Aadmi and a Kaal Aadmi. Now these workshops, these evangelisms have to be done at multiple layers. Of course, there's a natural disaster or natural, black swan events like COVID, which pushed or propelled it further. That had to be done where UPI became a standard talk of the Aam Aadmi. Now, if we expect to have that kind of an effect, our evangelism engine should work at 100x speeds across use cases, across towns, where Khas Aadmi, Kaam Aadmi, and Aam Aadmi have to all be beneficiaries of this data product as a user. That is something that I sincerely immerse that we do. And it takes the whole village to raise a chain, and we should all have many villages of this to raise. Is my first comment. The second part here is, there are certain cases where we are already solving for it. Well, it's good that you pointed out for urban. Agriculture as a farmer is not a guy who can afford a geospatial product. However, an insurance or a bank requires that information so the farmer gets the needy help, whether it's a direct benefit transfer or a loan or whatever it is, or project-based financing for him to get there. That means a way that's being established here for what is working has to be made available so that multiple other such things can be happening across the board, because we are not creating one or two, we are creating one of the nation approach. So that these right steps are taken and we reduce our iteration to say what are the best practices there. The third one is again I go back to the amount of flight opportunities that we have in India is limited. Even with the private players coming in. If we have Smile and Poem and others, we should also have similar ones on the private side of it to upscale ourselves on this. At the engineering level, at the other level, we should ask them to go back and say, work with us at the first level itself so that when they come out of these engineering classes, they are the finished products that the industry can take and not typically come down as well. These are some things that I'd like to point out.
Right. On the use case side, Achyut, I'd like to know, for example, HCL, where do you get your use cases from? How do you aggregate the use cases on which you create the products that you talk about?
So products are there across data, across all the realms. Basically, foundational infrastructure which is there. Use cases. So I lead a division called as GovTech, which focuses on government to citizen, social sector, and national critical infrastructure. Use cases are all powered from our applications or day-to-day administrative challenges, which we look at it from a public sector standpoint, from sovereignty standpoint, from even alleviating citizen experiences that are there. And then the basic elements. So we go playbook wise, very easy to do. So as part of awareness, we've also what we're doing is that we also need to educate why Earth observation or why geospatial based input versus anything else. What could be the economical benefit when you do that, or what could be any compliance related benefit? For example, in critical infrastructure, you would need an SBOM compliance for the end output which would go across, right? So you would not want that in any of the value streams there is a breach which is there. So those type of playbooks, so we've developed a 6-sector 24 use case catalog which is completely mapped across what is space, what is downstream revenue which is there, and that is exactly what we work with government institutions like NGV, so that state e-missions also can take it forward in terms of implementation. So it's a cyclical process, and it also ensures awareness among stakeholders.
Thanks, Achyut. I'd like to turn to Director Asad here, who has been on the creation of application side for most of his life, and is now actually at the consumer end of things. So kind of a bridge between the two worlds, so to say. PLM Raju sir, like to ask you whether the consumer in government actually understands, and to what extent does he understand the benefits that can accrue from the adoption of space applications. What are the gaps there? How much do they truly understand? Do the government departments know enough to actually generate use cases and link them with space technology and space solutions?
One is whatever in the market is there as of now. The supply is coming from the most of the well-established companies. Whatever we have created, like a new startup. So, and most of them are unaware of that. So, we have to do more marketing, more then creation of awareness of the use cases, what these new startups are doing. And if you talk about established things, so there are big establishments, they have their own way of doing, and then there is a more profitable things. Suppose something can be done in 1 rupee, 10 rupees if they are doing it, startup can do it 1 rupee. So that type of thing, I think most of them are unaware of it. And another thing is, in terms of the supply side, I think you have created an environment, ecosystem is there now. But still establishing and delivering the things is have to happen. One is, there are many things in this. One is data product side. I think we are not ready in terms of satellites, our own satellites. Many things are coming up, commercial or companies owned by outside India. And then other than the big departments of defense side, where they can afford to buy these things, but there are thousands of millions of people who are looking forward to have affordable cost, so that I'm expecting that it should come from Indian space industry in terms of products. That is one important component. Other important component is there are open source solutions or tools for delivering the solutions in terms of value addition or application delivery. Any product, suppose I wanted a crop inventory, wanted a agriculture, wanted a forestry, different applications. The commercial softwares are very expensive in terms of economic things. So I think there should be a focus on that also, either in space tech lead, and then I'm not seeing that anybody coming in that software solution products. So that is very important component. I think we should also look into that. And as I see, there is a demand side, it is increasing. And then it is increasing because one is government is also trying to push. You use this space technology for all the different types of applications. Other side is, as InSpace is also promoting this, and it should come from supply side. They should also engage with more and more with the departments and to provide the solution. I think there is a lot of scope still to be done. See, in our case with InSpace, what we have done is workshop we have conducted. So there are 50 departments. But again, we have taken from whole Northeast and come to Assam. It is better than that. But still, it should be again focused. If it is agriculture, there should be a focused group of agriculture, forestry. So that means we should go more focused so that demand increases and the supply has to meet that. That is what my view.
Thank you very much, sir. So I think what's coming out very clearly is it's a chicken and egg, really speaking. Unless the awareness levels go up, and for which there needs to be a systematic effort towards getting that awareness to the people who are looking to consume the data, they are not going to be able to even come up or imagine the use cases that will happen as they get an idea of what the power of these applications and solutions is. A very quick run across the room there. From the discussion so far, can we identify, can be one word answers, that's what we need. Can we identify a few major shortfalls which will prevent us from meeting the demands of expansion or expanded demand, and which we need to definitely have attention on? It could be related to resources. The resources could be data, resources could be high compute, resources could be the processing infra, it could be technology to convert it into applications, it could be the manufacturing at mass scale, manufacturing capacity, it could be human resource, it could be the guidance and expertise that's available. So what can we put our finger on some of the shortfalls that we definitely need to pay attention to? Yes, please. Just speak loudly.
Yeah. So I'm Mithun Singh. I'm a budding space enthusiast, I can say.
Wait for the mic.
I'm Mithun Singh. I'm a budding space enthusiast with 10 years of experience in multiple domains. So one shortfall, what I am seeing is based on my background with high performance computing, and I'm linking with the recent. This might be hypothetical, but still it is possible with the recent tariff wars that is going around the geopolitical tensions. So we don't have our own indigenous chipsets like Intel or AMD like kind of processors from our country. So when we want to crunch huge data with our own indigenous, then probably
Got it. Point understood. We don't have our own chip, right?
Yeah.
And therefore we don't have our own ability to produce the high compute.
Yeah. But India, as we are gearing up with electronics now, I think we need to collaborate with that industry as well, and then we need to gear up parallelly. That's my point.
Thank you. Anybody else, any other point?
Hi, I'm Nitish from InSpace. So I told one point that demand has to come up and then supply can come. My view is slightly that there should be a surplus of demand at first, and then we have to make habit of more demand to the consumers, and then the demand would eventually catch up. And
You say, yeah, I think that's a great point that he makes, is that as the demand scales up, it should be feeding into available supply to start with. It means the supply side actually needs to have a little bit of a margin at any given time to absorb what may happen on this side, right?
Sure.
Anybody else?
So another one is language barrier actually. In terms of our geographical width and height, so we have different languages actually. So if we convert our technology into understandable language to farmers basically, so that would be more better.
Yeah, and let me just fill in on that one. There are a large number of apps that are very much being made in local languages, accessible to the absolute end user, last mile farmer in his own language. Those are being made. So that's more of the demand side of things. From the panel, any suggestions on shortfalls that you would want to identify before we move to the solution side? Please, please.
So actually, I have some points to make. So Karnataka as a state, we are coming up with space policy, new space policy. So while the drafting of the policy, we had interaction with multiple stakeholders of the policy. So few things which came up regarding that, we are talking about the demand side. So the most from the stakeholder side, which was the demand has to be created to make it scalable. Because space related applications, the startups or industry which are related to it, it is a high risk sector and a high investment sector also. So first they have to have sufficient scale to invest that much amount into the sector to generate return. So there is a heavy demand of making this adoption and awareness, heavy focus on adoption and awareness, so that multiple department or multiple sector becomes the end user and demand is generated. So once the demand is generated, then these startups will be able to feed into it and develop solutions and into the market. So this is one part. Second part is skill, obviously, because the sector is undergoing tremendous changes, and all these new technology like AI, big data is coming up, and all most of the solutions which will be getting developed, it will be based on these technologies. So currently in India, the sad reality, we don't have that much skilled professionals. So as he also said, the interactions with startups, that when they are interacting with out of 100 applicants, they are able to select one. So that is one area which we have to heavily focus upon. Infrastructure wise, one point which came up was the availability of these testing facilities. So once you have developed the solution, you have to test it and get it ready. So there is a lack of testing facility which is available for the startups to access it. And as we were discussing earlier, the data. So main thing which is space related startups that will ultimately end thing is data. You need data. So currently still also most of the data related to space sector is with the public sector entities. Either it is government department or with ISRO or other entities. So once the startup is collaborating with them to get the data, so what is the accuracy of data and how much data in what format they are able to get. So that is one of the big challenge which has come up. So and regarding that, it has to be some kind of digital public good or digital public infrastructure which has to be created so that they get the data accessibility. And lastly, I would like to say the end use cases which is getting developed, whether it is matching the reality real use cases. So now most of the startups or companies are working in silo, and they don't have the access to the end user which will be going to utilize those solutions. For example, we had one workshop with the department, multiple department and startup. We had invited some 10 startups to showcase their solutions, and from the department side to like their end user. So multiple things which came up that when startups projected their solutions. So one thing is whether it will be cost effective to adopt that solution by the department, and second thing is whether those solutions will be accurate. For example, in one specific example is in forest, if we say. So there was a principal chief conservator of forest. His question was forest change the every year on year wise that happens. So there are solutions which has already been developed by ISRO and KSAC to detect the changes. But whether we are able to go into the canopy level, whether we are able to detect changes at a different canopy level, how much change is happening, or let's say in terms of encroachment, how much like year on year encroachment is happening, or let's say in like Western Ghat area where areca nut and coconut is the most common thing. So if somebody is encroaching the forest and growing areca nut, it is mostly at the same canopy level.
So a good correlation between the requirements, the demand that's there.
So whether we are able to develop those kind of solutions or not.
Yeah.
So I think these are the challenges which has come up while through the discussion with the relevant stakeholders.
Excellent. And I'm so glad you picked up the mic here because my next question was going to be to you. Representing the government side now, can you quickly give us a broad outline of what you're planning on the Karnataka state side in your manufacturing cluster? And having heard the people now whose job it is to deliver those solutions and the shortfall, some of them you yourself have identified, how are you going to help bridge that gap? As the government which is taking it upon itself to create the infrastructure and the manufacturing cluster and other facilities, how are you going to help bridge the gap and help the industry to be able to scale up?
So talking from government point of view, this first thing after consultation we are coming with the draft policy, and in the policy we have tried to tackle all these challenges. So talking about the skilling component, so there is a plan to like focus heavily on the skilling, and the interventions is designed at multiple levels. For example, starting from school students, making them aware about these space related education. Then college students coordinating with this education agencies, universities to develop these skills into their curriculum, graduate curriculum, and finally the young professionals who is passed out and looking for work. For them, the focus on skilling in collaboration with industries. So Karnataka has this Nipuna Karnataka scheme where we are trying to train sector-specific skills, and there is also incentive even for the industry or startups who wants to skill their employee in specific to space-related sector. For them, incentives is being given. And coming to the infrastructure part, so we are coming up with about 100-acre space manufacturing clusters. Where different kind of incentives will be given to the units which is being set up. For example, land subsidy or stamp registration, electricity duty exemptions. So whole lot kind of incentives which are being planned in that. And apart from that, from innovation and aspect, there are incentives regarding IP creation, quality certification, all these things. And coming to there is a separate testing center also is planned within the space manufacturing clusters, so that the startups can utilize those testing facilities. And if they are utilizing other testing facilities, then there is a 50% reimbursement that they can get. So these kind of incentives will be trying to promote the one part is manufacturing aspect, that supply side, and second thing is the promotion of the ecosystem in the space sector. Like we have developed ecosystem in different areas like startup, biotech, ESCM. So now on the same line we are trying to create the space ecosystems also. And next aspect regarding the where the end use cases and the development of solution, whether it is matching. So for that we are planning every bi-monthly one workshop where all the user department will come up and all these startups, industry which are developing the solution will connect with them directly so that they can discuss and they can further whatever changes is required they can take it forward.
Thank you so very much. I think that's a lot of good information there. And my very last question and a very quick one is to L&T and HCL. As the large players in the market, what is it that you can do to work in a collaborative manner with the smaller players when that time comes to increase both capability and capacities? Very quick, please.
Sure, sir. So one big thing that we bring on table as a large industry is the capability to scale up. When India wanted, we could invest quickly and ramp it up quickly, be it anything, missiles, anything that is required. Similar thing can be done here, and we have initiated such actions. We are partnering with Goa in some of the programs. In that way, we are open and we can do that. Once we see that there is a requirement, we can definitely scale it up and collaborate with the startups for their innovative ideas and take it on board and give the results.
So help the underutilized infra that we already have in public sector. Let's completely utilize that. So we are in it to completely invest in capital intensive capex. That's our strength. So use the capex, whether it's data, whether it's anything else, and also enable our startups so that they can build on top of it. Usually, that's where that value of death really comes in between. So let's try to avoid that.
Thank you. So very quickly here, what I'm seeing is some impressive numbers there. 50,000 crores on data products, right? Concerns from my side still are that capabilities exist, capacities don't. Capabilities built in the lab can be built quickly. Capacities take sometimes years to build, a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of people. So these remain very much alive. I believe we need to identify, and I think they've identified some of them. So what I'm gaining from this panel really is some of the major areas to be worked upon. Processing capacities. Also related to, as the young man there brought out, the fact that we don't have our own chip and therefore we are dependent on somebody else. Data centers. Ability to plan on a larger scale. Talent development. Human resource could be the single point of failure when an expansion starts if the right material is not there. And my appeal here is going to be, Karnataka government just brought up something very nice, that they are actually looking at skilling as is required by the industry, which is exactly what is required. At the same time, I think industry needs to invest in developing the talent for itself, because only the industry knows what it needs. So what skill sets? So I think to an extent the industry also needs to come together and help in that particular process. Choked clouds, very real problem. Consumer awareness. Now that's something that from InSpace's side we are doing. What I hear from Karnataka, very heartening. And what happened in Assam was absolutely fantastic. Infrastructure and testing facilities, there already are many. And something very delightful is the larger players saying, we have ours and they can be used by the smaller players. Data shortfalls, critical, possibly crippling shortfall. Because if you don't have appropriate kind of data sets, you cannot do your AI work on it. And that takes years to really do millions of data sets, processing and all of that. We are attempting to create a use case repository. Just the two saws between the states of Assam and Kerala that we did has yielded over 75 to 80 mint use cases that application developers can work upon. We want to get it out into a visible area. But this is something we all need to work upon so that the application developers can do something that is realistic and meets the user requirement. Cost effectiveness of these solutions, extremely important point made here by Daljeet here, and the credibility of these solutions, whether it actually meets their requirement or not. That's again some an area where industry needs to make sure that the product they're coming up with meets user requirement. Supply chain we've touched upon. On the solution side, what I'm seeing is the underutilized infrastructure is a potential that we need to bring together, integrate in some kind of a common matrix so that we know where it is and we can utilize it. Where all is it? How much do we have to do? Open question. Digital public infrastructure needs to be, government needs to work on this. State government initiatives is one of the most delightful developments of recent times. It was not part of our original calculations. We were all looking at central government as being the principal. But with the state governments coming in, they're sovereign, they have their own money, own land, own plans, own policies. So something very, very delightful is happening in front of our eyes, and we are really looking forward now to the state governments taking lead there. And of course the large players probably need to look most seriously at how they can be the umbrella for the small players. Right? In our case, the space industry needs to first hold hands, survive together as a sector. We can compete later. With that little summary there, thank you very much all the panelists from my side here. Thank you very much, Sia, for the opportunity and for giving us this time and place to ideate together. And with that, can I call for a round of applause for our panelists here. Thank you so very much for the audience. Last day, last mile, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Indeed, last day and last wonderful session. And before gentlemen, you proceed to leave, I would ask Mr. Rajiv Gambhir from SIA-INDIA to just give you a small token and memento from SIA-INDIA and have a group picture as well. And then we all proceed to closing, which has already been taking place with the Sovereign 1 and Sovereign 2. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the wonderful 3-day. On behalf of SIA-INDIA, thank you all. And please proceed to the closing presentation, please.
You should have just pretended to activate the bar, the hall would have been full. Just make some clinking sounds.
Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you.
Just one group picture, and then everybody, please proceed to the closing ceremony.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We are all proceeding towards the main hall. We have slowly planned this all.
Thanks for that.